Okay. We're going to play a little flute music to begin with.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all. I invite you all to just take a deep breath. Welcome to this gathering. A couple little announcements. Just a reminder that there's a congregational meeting in a couple of weeks on May 23rd. And if you are someone who is interested in pledging to support Westside in the coming year, we are doing that now. Please message me privately in the chat or send me an email and I'll help you get connected with our finance team to do that. Today we have the luxury and the privilege of having Chris Edkins talking about what it means to have these different communities of people who are attending in person and people who aren't attending at all and people who are attending on Zoom and what that all means. So today we begin. Chris is going to invite the bowl to sound for us. So I invite you to just take a breath and find that place in the center where you feel your own sense of unity. Thank you, Chris. I'm going to ask Chris to light our chalice while I read this poem. These words come from 14th century Persian poet Shamsuddin Muhammad Hafiz. This is called All the Hemispheres, and it's a translation by Daniel Ladinsky. Leave the familiar for a while. Let your senses and body stretch out like a welcomed season onto the meadows and shores and hills. Open up to the roof. Make a new watermark on your excitement and love. Like a blooming night flower, bestow your vital fragrance of happiness and giving upon our intimate assembly. Change rooms in your mind for a day. All the hemispheres in existence lie beside an equator in your heart. Greet yourself in your 1,000 other forms as you mount the hidden tide and travel back home. All the hemispheres in the heaven are sitting around a fire, chatting, while stitching themselves together into a great circle inside of you.
Thank you, Carol. My name is Chris Edkins. I think maybe all of you are a little bit familiar with who I am, but I've been on the worship committee for a while, and currently I'm also serving as past president on the board of trustees. And our service today is, as Carol says, it's about these two communities that we have now, the in-person community and our virtual community. And I'm going to share some of my personal experiences about that as we go through our service today. So I want to start off by saying I have a very peculiar relationship to technology. I'm a computer programmer, and quite often people think that that means, you know, I'm au fait with all kinds of technology and can help them solve their computer problems. But I actually program in a computer language which is very old. It was invented in the 1960s at Massachusetts General Hospital. It's called MUMPS. And many people think that that computer language is so archaic that it ought to be done away with. But of course, once you've written lots of programs in a language and people are out there using them, it's not so hard to toss them out and rewrite them anymore. So there's still plenty of opportunities to program in that language. But I love to program in this language because it's very unstructured, which is kind of like me. You know, you don't have a lot of rules to follow, and it allows you to follow your creativity, which is a wonderful thing. But the other thing I'm peculiar with is my relationship with my cell phone, which you can see that I have this flip phone here that I use. It's not a smartphone. And not only do I just have this flip phone, but quite often I turn the ringer off when I'm somewhere where I don't want it to go off, and then forget to turn it back on again. Also, I quite often leave it at home by accident, and then I need it to call somebody, or I'm supposed to be meeting somebody, but I don't know where they are and I haven't got my phone so I can call them. So I know that probably as you use, we have our eccentricities and peculiarities around technology. So I'm kind of both in and out of technology. So that sort of plays into the stories I'm going to take today. 4 years ago, I was working in Nashville for the state of Tennessee, and I was commuting over to Nashville every week and staying over there, and then driving back again for the weekend. And I then had the opportunity to take a job that was 100% remote, where I only work from home. When I started this job, I never had to go into the office. They sent me, FedExed me my computer. That, in fact, I'm using that computer today for this service because it's a really nice one. And I have been working that job remotely and meeting with people, and you know, I've had a couple of promotions even, and I'm a manager, development manager now. And when I first started that job, people said to me, "Do you think you're going to be able to do that?" I don't think I could work in that way, completely isolated from not being able to meet in person with the people that you're working with, and you know, have that exchange of ideas. I have to say that hasn't turned out to be an issue. We seem to get the job done perfectly okay with us all working remotely. It hasn't been a problem. But what I thought might be a problem for me was the problem of the social isolation, which at that time, it was not an issue for me. I was very much involved in the flow, the everyday flow of my church work. I was coming to church every Sunday and meeting people and going to lunch with people. And there were lots of in-person committee meetings. And also, I'm an alcoholic and I'm involved with Alcoholics Anonymous. So I had my meetings that I was going to 5 or 6 a week, where I could meet people in person and do all that good stuff. So I thought, I'm going to be fine because, you know, I have all these other things to balance up my remote working. So of course, when COVID started, a lot of that was lost. We stopped meeting at all at the church to begin with, of course. And they also suspended in-person meetings of AA for 2 or 3 months, and they didn't start back up until about May of last year. So one of the things that happens with me when I have something like the church or or my meetings, that I feel I'm really dependent upon those things for my good health, for my mental health, and then I lose them. I have this sour grapes experience. So I don't know if you've heard, it's an Aesop's fable that the term sour grapes comes from. And this is the story. A fox is hungry and he's walking through a vineyard and he sees some grapes hanging up high, and he says to himself, "Oh, I bet those grapes are lovely and juicy and sweet. I'm going to jump up and eat those grapes." and he tries jumping up, and he jumps up and he jumps up, but he can't reach the grapes. They're too high. And eventually he says to himself, oh, I didn't want those grapes anyway. I bet they were unripe. They were sour. And he goes on his way and thinking that he didn't want those grapes at all. And that's the experience I had when I lost access to those things. I thought, well, if those things are going away, then obviously I don't need them. So I did not do much in terms of joining the Zoom meetings for the church or joining the Zoom meetings for my AA meetings at that time. And I took the opportunity just to take some time off and to not join in. So that's really what happened to me initially. But luckily for me, I have responsibilities. Being on committees helps to keep you engaged, and being involved in the work of an organization gave me an entree back into it. I'm the treasurer of one of my AA groups, and that kept me engaged with that. I had to set up a Venmo account so that people can continue contributing. And of course, I'm on the worship committee here at the church. So there came a time when I was facilitating or giving a church service, and it was on Zoom. And I think the first one I did was the Thanksgiving, where we did the bread communion. And I thought to myself, well, how are we going to do this thing where people normally in the bread communion, we have communal bread and we have communal grape juice, and people come up and they take part in that service, and we have a little message to go with it. So of course we couldn't do that. Instead, what we did was, of course, everybody was able to have their own bread and their own juice or wine or beverage or whatever it was that they wanted to have at home. And we still had the message, and then we still had the ceremonial part of it where people ate their own bread and their own juice. I thought, wow, this actually is really good. It works out just fine. And it gave me an opportunity to come up with some different, more creative ways of doing things. So at that point, I became a Zoom convert for Zoom worship. I know there are some people who are only in person, or some people in the church who say, I will come back when we can meet in person again. But I'm kind of engaged with both the Zoom community and the in-person community again now, and I think that's a good place to be. I'm enjoying it, and it's creative. So I think as we move forward with our future, I know that we are saying that we are going to have to continue to offer both in-person and virtual worship, which is what we're doing now. Because during the time that we've had Zoom, we've had people come to the church who could not physically be with the church, and yet they are fully engaged and valuable members of our community. And we want to continue those relationships and continue to do those things. So I know that as we move forward, we are going to offer both the in-person and virtual worship. So I think one of the questions in my mind is, how do we get the crossover so that the people who are in person can sometimes meet the Zoom people? And how can we get the crossover so that the Zoom people can sometimes meet the in-person people? Because not everybody is a hybrid. Not everybody is going to be going backwards and forwards between the in-person and the Zoom community. So I think that's something that is open to discussion with the church, and something maybe we can talk about in the coffee hour. So I'm going to tell another little story, and it takes me back to Nashville again. When I first started, when I was doing the job that I have now, there came a time when I needed to take a certification for the agile methodology that we use in our programming job. It's called Scrum. And I needed to go and learn about how to work this Scrum system. We have little teams, and we identify small pieces of work that can be done. And then we do that work and we present it to the customer. And then we do these little iterations so that we're constantly getting feedback on what we do with our work, which, you know, works really great for the virtual world. So I needed to go to Nashville to take this class, and it was right before the lockdown started. If I'd have taken the class on the Monday of the following week instead of the Friday of the previous week, it would have been cancelled. It would not have been able to be in person. So I drove to Nashville. We had our class that we had over there. And while I was at that class, I met another participant that was there. And the idea of the lockdown was kind of being floated then. And I was having a conversation at lunch with a young woman, and I said to her, this reminds me of an Isaac Asimov story that I read when I was younger. I was a big Asimov fan. In fact, when I was in the last 2 years of high school in South Wales, they called me Asimov. That was my nickname, because I was always had my head stuck in a book. But there are these two stories. One is called The Caves of Steel, and the other one is called The Naked Sun. And they're detective stories. And there's a detective in there called Elijah Bailey. And there's a murder has happened of a diplomat from off-world, from a colony planet. And Elijah Bailey is assigned to investigate this. And he has a partner who is a robot who's been sent to partner up with him. Of course, the robots in Asimov stories they're so sophisticated, they're indistinguishable from human beings, and they're very smart, you know. So on Earth, robots have been banned because the dignity of individual human work is considered to be so important that they don't want artificial intelligence and robots taking jobs from people. So, you know, people look with suspicion upon robots. But over the course of the story, Elijah Bailey comes to like and appreciate his robotic partner. They kind of become friends. So when a murder happens on one of the colony planets, they specifically ask for Elijah Bailey to go and investigate that murder. And he goes to this planet called Solaria. And what's happened is that a man has been killed, and they've no idea how it could possibly have happened, because on this planet, everybody lives on their own estate. Everybody has hundreds of acres that are looked after and tended by robots. Robots do all the manufacturing. All people have to do is have their hobbies. You know, they do scientific research, or they have an art form that they're perfecting, and they spend their time doing that. But nobody can stand to be in the room with another human being. It's considered to be obscene to, you know, breathe the same air as somebody else and be in the same room as somebody else. And in fact, they even reproduce themselves through artificial insemination. So nobody even gets together for the purposes of reproduction. In the end, in the story, the conclusion that they come to and present to the community of this world is that one of the robots went wrong and committed the murder, which of course is actually impossible, because Asimov's 3 laws of robotics make it impossible for a robot to harm a human being. But this is the story that they sell. But they know that what really happened was that the person's wife actually killed him. The wife was an aberration in their society, in that she had a desire to be in a room with another person and touch them and, you know, kiss her husband and such things like that, which was considered to be totally unacceptable. And when she comes to him and says she wants to do these things, he's so revolted by it, you know, that he repulses her, and she gets mad and beats him to death. But she doesn't go down for the crime. They kind of get her off. They think, you know, that she's a victim of the social circumstances, and she gets sent to another planet where she can actually have the human contact that you know, that she really wants. So when it came up that we were thinking that we were going to be doing this quarantining, that was the kind of thing that sprang to mind with me, that I hope that our society doesn't come to the point where we're so afraid to be in the same room as another person that we become like this, you know. So hopefully, I hope that's not going to happen, and it's not really going that way. But There's another Asimov story, a very short one that he writes, where a guy is out for a walk and the police stop him and threatening to arrest him because it's so unusual. Nobody goes out for a walk in this society. And we've kind of come to that now where, you know, certainly if you look a certain way and you're walking in a certain neighborhood, it's considered that, you know, you shouldn't be there and you shouldn't be out for a walk. So who knows, you know, that came to pass in our society in our time. It may come to pass that, you know, we don't tolerate being in the same room with another person. So when Sue Draper, who's also on the worship community with me, I had the great pleasure of living with her for a while, and it reminds me of the fact that when she came to church, we always had a hug together. And one time she told me, you know, the hug I have from you on a Sunday is the only human contact I have with anybody all week, and I so value it. And I think maybe there are other people who are like that, who we need that in-person contact and that human contact to be healthy. But I don't want to devalue the wonderful things that technology has done for us. I love my virtual job, and I would not want to give up my virtual work. And I know that this virtual church opens up an opportunity for a lot of people to be engaged with this community who would not otherwise be able to be engaged. So I don't want to give the impression that I'm advocating for in-person services over our virtual or our Zoom services, because I know that they're both very valuable and that we value the members of both the Zoom community and the in-person community, and those people like myself who are crossovers between the two. But the thing I want to open up for discussion is this idea of how can we become a community as a whole? How can we unite the two communities and have contact between them so that we can get to know each other and talk to each other and understand each other's wishes and desires, the things that we want to have for the future of the church, the different ideas that we have, so that we can realize and recognize that we are all valuable members of the church community, regardless of whether we're in the building or in the grounds or whether we're on Zoom. So let's hope that we can take this opportunity to use technology to enhance our human experience and our worship experience, and that we don't go down the path of going to the extremes and letting it isolate us. I know from my own experience that being isolated for a while, it starts to become more difficult to go about, you know, and meet with other people, not only in person, but other people are, you know, we can't control them. Sometimes they're awkward. Sometimes it's difficult to interact with people. But when you are in the habit of doing that and talking to people and being engaged with people every day, it's not a problem. But I know for me, when I take myself out of it, sometimes it's difficult to go back into it, go back into that difficulty. I actually went to a retreat up at the Wellbeing Retreat Center up in Tazwell a few years ago. And I was with such a wonderful spiritual community, a group of Reiki people. We were building a labyrinth together. And I drove from there home and I dropped my wife off. And immediately afterwards, I went to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I came out of there, I thought, wow, the difference between the refined spiritual community of the Reiki group and the raw emotionality of the AA meeting. It was such a juxtaposition between the two. And it taught me something. You know, there are these different aspects of humanity, and our spirituality encompasses all of those things, both the community of people who are struggling and who are broken, and the people who have gone along their spiritual path and are able to to help other people and heal the world. We're all equally valuable, and we're all in it together. So let's keep the dialogue open and get to know each other and our different priorities and where we're coming from. So thanks for listening, and I'll hand it back over to Carol for closing up.
Thanks, Chris. It's lovely. So I invite you all to just take a minute. That opening poem spoke about the hemispheres in our hearts, right? One of the things, like, the story of the fox and the grapes and the sour grapes and I don't need that. We all kind of compartmentalize. Compartmentalizing is one of the things we do to feel safe, right? So some people during this time have said, it is safest for me not to go into buildings. And other people have said, I'm just not going to do computers because I don't like computers. We choose the compartments that feel safest for us, that feel comfortable for us, where we match. And at the same time, those compartments are all connected. So Hafiz talks about the hemispheres in the heart all being part of one bigger circle. And one of the things I said this morning as we were closing is that, Westside isn't a Zoom ID number. It isn't necessarily the faces in the boxes. It isn't the building. It isn't the land. It isn't the committees. Westside itself, and Unitarian Universalism is an even bigger circle, is the spirit. It's the spirit. And in that larger circle, there are many different groups, rooms, compartments. So what I'd like to invite everyone to do is just take a minute and close your eyes if you're willing, or just, let your gaze focus somewhere else, somewhere not on the center of the room. And feel yourself as separate. Feel yourself as that separate individual, you in your own space with yourself. Because that's the smallest compartment. And we all have different levels of comfort with being completely with ourselves and alone. And now, just as you're feeling yourself, become aware of the people you are most willing to have be in your bubble with you. Who else gets to be in your closest compartment? And maybe what places feel most comfortable to you to include in your compartment. And then begin to expand that out. What's just on the edge of that? What's the next level out that you're a little bit comfortable with, but not necessarily the compartment you want to spend a lot of time in? And now expanding that out even more, imagine those people or beings or places that you are connected to but less comfortable with, that are outside your comfort zone, but that you are still connected to and in relationship with. And just imagine all the hemispheres, all the different worlds, all the different realities that people experience, that creatures experience, all the different possible ways of being in this world, all connected together. And imagine, as Hafiz says, all the hemispheres in the heaven are sitting around a fire chatting while stitching themselves together in the great circle inside of you. We are all bound together, connected in ways that we do not understand. So let us, as we go into our day and our week, remember the greater circles of which we are a part, and be willing to open our hearts to connect and build bridges and make unity where sometimes separation feels more comfortable, whether that is physically or just spiritually or philosophically or emotionally or whatever it is for you. Let us remember that great circle that binds us all together. May it be so.